So we wrote our first line of code, and we're setting a variable here. And this variable, of course, doesn't do anything yet. Now, let's do something simple. Let's, for the moment, not care about what the user enters here, but let's make sure that we actually right away have a simple mathematical operation where we output the result down here in the result part of this screen. And therefore, I want to set current result to a new value, and that new value will later be the user input, but since we don't really fetch this yet, I'll use a dummy value here, let's say 10, but you can use any number you want, and add this to the current result. So let's say current result plus 10, and then store this value back in current result. So here a couple of things are happening. I'm again referring to the current result variable here on the left side of the equal sign and on the right side. And if we start on the right side, I'm using the current value stored in current result, and I'm adding a value to it. In this case, 10. I'm adding by using this plus operator. Now, operators are something we haven't heard about yet. What are operators? Operators are syntax features, or a syntax feature in JavaScript that allows us to manipulate values, you could say. And there are the typical mathematical operators you're used to. Plus, minus, then the asterisk operator, the asterisk character here to multiply two numbers, and the slash to divide two numbers. There also is a modulus operator, the percentage sign, which divides two numbers but doesn't return the result of the division, but the remainder, so the part that remains if a clean division without a decimal value as a result isn't possible. And there also is the exponentiation operator, which allows you to, well, use exponentiation on a number. Now, these are the mathematical operators, which you typically also know from math. There also are other operators in JavaScript, like the assignment operator, which we already used to assign a value to a variable, the equal sign. So here in this line of code, we're using two operators, the plus operator to combine two numbers. And now this combination, this operator, yields the result of this mathematical operation. And we then assign this result we're getting here with the equal sign to the value on the left, or to the variable on the left. So here, current result gets overwritten with the result of this operation. And now we use current result on both sides of the equal sign, but the right side will execute first. That's something you can just keep in mind. And therefore, we'll use the old result, 0, here, add 10, and therefore we now have 10 as a total result, and then we override current result with it. So we only override it after we're done with this calculation, so that we don't try to override it with a value we depend on or anything like that. So now current result, after this line was executed, will store a value of 10. Now to output this, we can use one of the things I'm providing here in Vendor, and we'll learn what exactly that is in just a second. For now, we'll use this output result thing by simply writing output result here, and then adding parentheses, opening and closing, and in there, you can pass in current result, just like this. Also add a comma, and thereafter two single quotes with nothing in between. Again, I'll come back to what this is and what this does in just a second. If you do that and you now reload your page, you should now see result 10 down there. That's just the result of our code which executed here. We're calculating this result, storing it here, and then what this thing here, which we're getting from the vendor file, what this does is actually, it just takes whatever we pass in here and outputs this in this part of the HTML page. And throughout the course, it will become clearer how this works. For the moment, we can just take it for granted. So we had a first basic look at a variable, at an operation, and then at this thing here, which we don't really understand. Let me come back to that operation. Here, we use two operators, but as I mentioned, there are a couple of operators available, actually more than the ones I just showed, but even with those which I did show, all these basic mathematical operators, you can do a bunch of things. And you're not limited to two operators per line or to one. You can also add the asterisk here, the multiplication operator, and multiply this by 3. And JavaScript by default follows normal mathematical rules, where it will now first execute 10 times 3 and then add this to current result. You could change that order, however, by adding parentheses, just like you do it in Moth. If I add parentheses around that, now JavaScript will first add 10 to current result and then multiply the result of this with 3. And of course, we can then also divide this by 2 and subtract 1, or whatever you want. You can have any mathematical equation here, any mathematical operation here, as long as it should be where you can use parentheses to group the different mathematical calculations together if you need to do that. So now if I would run this, for example, I get a result of 14, because we have 0 plus 10 times 3 divided by 2 is 15, minus 1 is 14. So that makes sense. Now, with that out of the way, let's think a bit more about the values we're actually working with. I added a number here, but numbers are not the only values you can use in JavaScript, and actually in all other modern programming languages.